This podcast is brought to you by the Association for Coaching, the world's leading international professional body, which is advancing coaching in business and society worldwide. I'm your host, Sheela Hobden, and I am an executive coach and research practitioner. And in this new series, I'm delighted to introduce you to fellow coaches and researchers who share my passion for the transformative potential of research in coaching. Through curious conversations and practical insights, this series aims to inspire coaches to embrace evidence-based practices and enrich their professional journey. Hello, everybody, to this next edition on Research in Coaching podcast. Today, I'm joined by Christine Vitzthum, who is a coach based in Germany. We met at the Oxford Brookes Coaching and Mentoring Conference, and I found the research that she was presenting really interesting. And so I would like to very much welcome you, Christine, today.
Thank you so much for having me, Sheela. I'm very excited to be here.
And I'm not going to spoil what your research was about. We will come to that shortly. But let's maybe dive in and invite you to share what made you say yes when I invited you.
Different elements, I think. As you said, we met at the Coaching and Research Conference, and I really loved your energy and your enthusiasm about research. So anything I could and can do to support that, I'm happy to do so. But also, I think coaching research is so important for this field because it's a new area and there's not a lot of coach-specific research. So anything we have and anything that will be added to this field really helps coaching and the approaches we use. But also, doing my research has been such an amazing and insightful journey for me that I'm happy to share anything I can and maybe convince people who are not quite sure whether to undertake their own research to just give it a try because it's really worth it.
Thank you for sharing. And yes, I'm really interested in the journey. And it was doctorate research, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
If I remember right, the title is Gender Sensitivity in Coaching. I'd love you to share more about that.
So the official title was Exploring the Approaches of Coaches and Organizational Stakeholders in Support of Gender Diversity. I adopted and developed the concept of coaching with gender sensitivity as part of the findings because it's such a complex topic. And when I introduced it to people, their mind and the first association was to coaching women. Gender diversity was always about coaching women, but it's so much more than that. And that's why I developed the concept of coaching with gender sensitivity. And it's about broadening the space and including all genders in that conversation.
Yeah. Where did your thinking start?
In my practice as coach, so I did a master in coaching and mentoring at Oxford Brookes starting in 2014. And because my own parental transition journey was a bit of a nightmare, that was my research focus then. So I explored how parental transition coaching can help new parents in adjusting and returning to work and hitting the ground running and remaining engaged and on career track while balancing their family needs. So when I started working here in Germany, I realized that a lot of the issues that popped up during the coaching conversations were a lot broader than just around that parental transition. They were more about the gender roles and the stereotypes and the assumptions we hold. So I loved doing the MA, really enjoyed that academic world while being a practitioner, and decided to go back and explore what we as coaches can actually do. And on the other hand, what do we do in a workplace context? How do organizational stakeholders approach coaching when they say, we want someone to coach on gender diversity, or we have these female leadership programs and we give them a coaching? What does that mean?
Yeah. So you did your master's and then that inspired you to go on and do more.
Yeah.
And what did you learn from the research that you went on to implement?
It's all complex and messy, and there's never a straightforward answer. I think one of my main takeaways is that gender is such a complex and a social construct that you can't really deal with gender issues on an individual level. It needs that broader approach. So I actually adopted a more systemic approach to my coaching. And as a result of my research, I invite organizational stakeholders to become active parts in the coaching process so that we have a platform where we share and understand structural challenges. So we're not just treating the symptoms by coaching individual people, but really address root causes and differentiate between individual issues and structural challenges so as not to pathologize particularly women or implying skills deficits or making them fit into organizational structures or individualizing structural challenges, but that we have that space to address this is a personal issue and that remains within the one-to-one coaching. This is a structural issue and we can address this in the broader context.
Yeah, that's really useful because, yes, when we're coaching one-to-one, it can have the potential to support someone to navigate the environment in which they're working.
Yes.
But as you say, that might be almost fueling the fire in terms of the problem because they find a way to fit into that rather than challenge the system, challenge the organisational structure that could be part of the root cause. So that systemic view sounds like it's really helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And what has it led on to, getting this research, using it? Where else has it taken you?
The first place it took me to is I was approached by my now business partner, and we started a new company at the beginning of last year. It's called Two Top, and it's based in Germany. We operate Germany-wide. We work together with amazing coaches and trainers and offer support for women in their leadership development and for organizations wanting to retain and engage women and support them in their leadership development from young career phases up into board level positions. So it's that whole holistic journey. And we have amazing coaches, trainers, we offer consultancy services, and we have a community where we offer roundtables and give hold speeches and just provide them with whatever they need to advance in their careers.
Fantastic. So you can make a direct link between the research that you conducted and a company that you started based on that research.
I'm also in the process of publishing articles, and there's a book proposal lying on my desk waiting to be taken a step further, but I just haven't had the time. But it's opened so many doors, and I think because coaching can be quite intangible and is used as an umbrella term mixed in with consultancy and training and God knows what, and there's a lot of uncertainty or messiness surrounding the topic. Having that doctorate really helps my credibility in that profession.
Yes, yeah, there's definitely a link between conducting research and credibility. And you also started off by saying that you wanted to share more of your journey, and I'm hearing the kind of what was achieved. And I'm wondering about the how, and you've used the word messy a couple of times. So I think it's important to hear all sides of the journey. What was your sort of personal experience?
I'm a practitioner. I come from a non-academic family. So I'm the first one out of my family to go to university at all. And then I never saw it in my cards to actually do a doctorate. And then in Oxford, so I'm German. It's not my mother tongue. Doing that was so out of my league for what felt like ages. But when I did the master's, it was such a great environment there. and such a supportive environment that I spoke to a couple of people, spoke with people who had done the same course and learned from their insights. So I decided to actually give it a go. It was in 2019. So living in Germany, I was really looking forward to traveling to Oxford loads, but then COVID hit. So it was a very emotional journey returning to academia and being in that environment while not being physically there. But also there were times where it was more of an emotional journey than I ever expected. There were times where I really thought, I'm not cut out for this. I'm not clever enough. I'm not good enough to do this. But my supervisors were amazing, and I had a brilliant cohort. I made friends for life, and we had such a good support group. We really helped and supported each other. And that's how I got through it, even with COVID and not being allowed to travel and all the restrictions and everything around us. It was still great and a very more emotional experience than I thought it would be. And from a professional or personal development, rather than professional, from a personal development, I learned a lot about myself. I'm a lot more resilient. I'm a lot more critical than I ever was. I've taken so much from it outside the actual work and the findings.
Yeah, like you say, friends for life. When you go through something tough and emotional, the people that are around you become really important, and you learn a lot about yourself and about the others as you do that. So what came out of your research that maybe you weren't expecting?
I was surprised when I spoke with participants and friends and colleagues that when we say coaching for gender diversity, it was automatically associated with coaching women and coaching women only. And that often led to women being seen as a homogenous group and men being seen as a homogenous group, ignoring any elements of intersectionality and just having women against men. So it can lead to polarization and an us versus them feeling. But one of the reasons I developed the concept of coaching with gender sensitivity is to move away from that polarization and really appreciate our individual differences, elements of intersectionality, and also the role of, and we're going back to that binary thing, men as gatekeepers in the process, just to really make it a more inclusive, open approach and appreciating people for who they are rather than having women versus men.
Yeah, thank you. That is really interesting. And you mentioned the word intersectionality there, and I think I understand it, but how does that work here in this context?
I'm not just a woman. I'm a white, cis, able-bodied woman. So it's just taking into account all of our different characteristics and ways of being.
Yes. And I remember coming across this actually when I did my supervision training around the different levels of privilege that someone may have or not have, depending on the intersectionality.
BIPOC person in my position might have completely different experiences from me. So it's taking into account who's sitting across us and what do they bring to the table, rather than just seeing men or women, a white woman, a black man, and making up our own stories about their characteristics and who they are and what they are.
And that intersectionality is something that's important in coaching in its own right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
But we're limiting ourselves when we look at just women and assuming women are this and women are that and men are this and what's in between. And you're different from me. I'm different from the next woman.
Yes. And there's so much emerging.
Are we making it a bit too simple by just assuming that we have these two categories and that's it?
Yeah. That word messy appearing again.
I didn't want to say it, but yes. It is messy and complex, but maybe that's one of the reasons we shy away from looking at it, because it requires us to engage with that messiness and that complexity. And it's so much easier to just say, you're this and you're that, and that's done.
And again, in the in the coaching space, embracing that messiness and the not knowing is where the power, I say power, I mean the impact of coaching, that going into those spaces. Yeah. I'm thinking about the write-up is quite significant for me as well at the moment, because I'm about to start writing up the methodology for my research so that I'm ready and don't have to do that as well as the analysis all together. And you said that, English isn't your mother tongue. And, again, thanks for giving your time for this today, because I know it's double hard for you to translate in your head at the same time as we talk. But coming back to my point, the write-up, how did you find that?
Difficult, messy again. I keep using that word. It was the blank page. I started becoming scared of blank pages, but I found it also really difficult to just start writing something and then going back to it and refining it, especially because it's not my first language. I wanted the sentences to be just right. So it was a lengthy process, but I managed to get on with it, lose that scare of the blank page, and just do a messy first draft and go back to it and refine it. What also really helped is that I took myself off a few times. So we had a study break in Malta together with my research buddy, where we worked for an entire week and just met for meals or to do some exercise. But other than that, just worked through it. And then I took myself off again and stayed in an empty family flat for a week. And that really helped me to get into the headspace. Because when you do it part-time, I'm a mum of two. I live in a house with a big family. I was working part-time while doing the course. I found it really hard to concentrate and get into that headspace. So taking off has really helped me. And that concentrated periods of work.
Yeah, so I'm hearing that if ever there was an opportunity for a holiday, do a research project so that you have to have some time out to write it up and go to somewhere beautiful.
Yeah, it was a holiday. It was a workation.
I like this, workation.
Yeah. It was those. We got so much done, and it was writing up our findings chapters. We met early in the mornings, had our targets for the day, met at lunch to see how we were getting on, and then met in the evenings to reflect the day and set our targets for the next day. And we really held ourselves accountable. So it was that dynamic between the two of us that really worked. And we got the chapter done and we got the whole thesis done.
Well, congratulations anyway. But it's also making me think about how we are interchanging the skills here. So the skills we have as coaches, setting some goals or intentions, checking in, what's the accountability, where have we got to, celebrating the progress. So what we're learning in coaching we can put into the research, and what we're learning in the research we can put back in to the coaching. And it's making me think about, we talked about, the outcome of the research, but then also how you did it and who you became. How did that go back into your coaching or go forwards into your coaching?
I've always struggled with the proclaim neutral stance we're supposed to have as coaches. What is that? How can we be neutral? I was raised in Germany. My socialization happened in Germany. I know it's different from my friends in the UK. I'm not a blank slate, and accepting that and being more open in what I do as a coach and making explicit what kind of agenda I have. I stand for gender equality. I'm not neutral. This is something that is important to me. So I think I've changed. I'm more open in who I am and what my values are as a coach and what I stand for and what I don't stand for. I make that very transparent. And I think I haven't done that to that extent in the past. And there's really fascinating research on how coaching can be a means of social change. And the more I learn about that, the more I feel that I want to use my coaching for that. And that starts with broadening the coaching spaces and not just focusing on the individual, but acknowledging structural issues and naming them and not just keeping that closed space, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the previous guests, Abhijit, talked about neutrality and his experience around that and questioning how we can be completely neutral when we do have our own value sets and our own experience sets. So it'll be fascinating to see more research emerging in that space.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What else are you interested in seeing in research terms?
I would love to see more research within organizations. Most research I've seen so far and read during my thesis was focused on either coachees or coachees and coaches. A lot of coaching takes place in workplace contexts, but there's hardly any research that looks at organizational stakeholders, and they're the ones buying coaching. So what motivates them? What are their goals? What are their approaches when they select coaches? A lot of coaching, from what I learned from my research, a lot of coaches are recommended verbally. There's not so much focus on qualification, but it's recommendation. Are they aware of that? How do they match coach and coachee to make sure it's a great fit? In general, what are their approaches to coaching? That would be interesting. This is like a workplace context. I'm also fascinated by anything and everything to do with neuroscience and coaching. God, there's so much, such a broad field. But yeah, the more I learn, the more questions I have.
Yes, I think that is it about research, isn't it? Because most pieces of research that you find will generally finish up with, but we need more research
Exactly.
on ... Exactly. And then that we can't help but...
You've covered one and it opens up 10 more doors. Oh, we could go down there and we could look at this. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And you mentioning the research in the organisations, and, you know, one of my questions was going to be, why do you think coaches should be paying attention to research? But speaking just then, it's made me think about, why should organisations be paying attention to research and coaching? I wonder what you think.
Because, it's a triad, isn't it? And there are power dynamics within that triad. And there is some interesting research on those power dynamics and how coaching can be used as, I mentioned that before, as a tool to individualize structural problems or to absolve organizations of their responsibilities for more structural challenges, or how it's used to pathologize individuals or make them fit into the culture. So I think for organizational stakeholders, understanding what coaching actually is and what it can achieve. I was surprised when I did my research of how little some organizational stakeholders understand coaching as an initiative and its impact and their responsibility in the process. So we can coach as much as we want. If our coachees don't have the opportunity to apply whatever they've learned within the systems and the structures they work in, it can only do so much. But if organizational stakeholders accept and understand the responsibility they have and are really engaged in the process, it can become that method of social change, and the impact can be multiplied, which is amazing. So yeah, I really see the value of organizational stakeholders understanding research and getting involved into coaching research.
Yeah, you know, I can imagine it'll be a huge project because of the number of people involved and because of all the ethical considerations that you might need to make because of that. However, yes, very, very important, because then we'll get to understand a bit more about how it can be structured and the different parts that people play, and, as you say, accepting their responsibilities. So yeah. And thinking about, you said you kind of wanted to share your journey to help coaches understand why it is so important to get involved in research. And through the series, we've been talking about research as a spectrum, from purely looking up some articles or looking up some papers to inform our practice, right through to running research, you know, completing a doctorate. What sort of words of wisdom would you have for other coaches listening about research?
For me personally, research is the backbone of everything I do as a coach. It helps me understand how we think, how we behave, how we act, how we change or how we don't change. And it really informs my approaches, and it helps us get to the heart of how people think, how they learn and how they change, or what is in the way of them changing and what hinders their progress. So, and as I mentioned before, research really increases the credibility of what we do as coaches. And for me, it's the bridge between theory and practice. So I think it's applying what I've learned from those theories and theoretical approaches into my everyday practice that I find really fascinating. I guess it's building bridges.
It's making me think as well about a previous conversation that I had around the need in some professional bodies, not necessarily in coaching, but in other industries, the requirement to be able to undertake research to demonstrate that you are keeping up to date. And I know this is just a complete out of the blue question. If the coaching bodies were to introduce a requirement to undertake research as part of the accreditation process, what do you think about that?
What kind of research? So would you require a full doctorate or an MA, or just looking at papers and drawing some conclusion from it?
So I guess it could be that could be the question. We could say if the professional coaching bodies were to introduce a requirement that part of the credential process or part of the accreditation process is to undertake some research, what would be the suggested level?
That's a tough one. I never thought about it. So just out of the blue, I think it could really help to prove that we as coaches are capable of critically engaging with the subject and reflecting on it and drawing conclusions from it. I don't think it would have to be to a doctorate level, but I think, and again, this is out of the blue, but I think it does help if we were able to show that we can tackle a subject from different perspectives, learn more about it, and apply it, transfer it to our coaching practice. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you for accepting the challenge on that question, because it just popped into my mind and I thought, let's see what is here. And the thing that stood out when you were speaking then was critical reflection, because to be able to reflect on one's practice is a core part of coaching, but also to be able to critically analyse what we are seeing and decide what's useful, what's not, what's credible, what's not, again, fuels the coaching conversations, because we are evoking awareness by looking at different perspectives. We are bringing in observations and looking at them without attachment. So I feel like if we introduced some kind of research concept to that accreditation process, I think it would really show that people have had to go through that process. Obviously, in many coaching training schemes, there's an element of essay writing. And I wonder whether the view of essays could change, or the perception of essays could change, to support people to understand how it's actually going to support their practice.
Yeah, that's a lot nicer put than I did it. So thank you for that. But also what came up for me as you were talking is that for me, it's such a natural part of the process to write a reflective log after the coaching sessions. What happened? How did I behave? How did I approach the session as a coach? How did I feel during the session? So reflecting on me as a person, my role as a coach, my engagement with the coachee is such a natural part of my process that I was really surprised when I spoke to a different coach the other day that she'd never done that before. So inviting, as part of the accreditation process, inviting coaches to engage in that critical reflection and critical engagement with a subject, I think can be really beneficial, just to raise their awareness of how important it is to critically reflect, not just on subjects, but on us as coaches.
A really multi-layered levels of reflective practice, and taking that forward. What does that mean for me next? So I feel like we've covered so much already. What do you feel we haven't said that you were hoping to say on this topic of research?
Maybe a word of encouragement. I think some people might fear that research is too technical, too academic, and not really relevant for practice, and it's so not. The most fascinating part of my research was conducting the interviews and speaking with amazing people and learning from their perspectives. And it was such an empowering and insightful experience. And yes, there is technical stuff attached to it, but it was so energizing and so uplifting and so relevant for my everyday work as a coach that I can't recommend it enough.
I can feel that energy, and I always have the same. And I've been reflecting on why I have got so excited about this and why I wanted to do this podcast. And I've always been into conducting experiments, and this might get edited out. The first experiment I ever conducted was, can I ride my bike with my eyes closed? And I found the answer in a tree. But I think the reason I expose myself in that way is because research doesn't have to be dry, and we're just answering curiosities, and we're actually doing it all the time. And I think that there are associations that have been made with it, like, oh, it's too technical, I need to write in a certain way, I need to be an academic, and those things just aren't true. And I think that's the link with coaching as well, because all the time in coaching we're challenging beliefs, we are exploring values, and so research just all really fits together.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it feels like we've covered all the things that we said we were going to cover. So where's the best place people can find you, Christine?
I guess the quickest and easiest way is on LinkedIn. Happy to answer any questions or have a chat with anyone who's interested in doing further research. And I'm always happy to help and support wherever I can. Thank
you so much. I think that is the thing, because we researchers want more people to experience the power of it.
Absolutely.
We're always very happy to have those conversations, because a 30-minute conversation can start all sorts of things. So, yeah.
It's how I got into it. People were so generous with their time and their knowledge. And I had a lot of discussions with people who'd done the course and who volunteered and talked to me so freely about their experiences, about the ups and downs, that I just want to give it back and share some of my excitement.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And I look forward to keeping in touch and seeing more of what you get up to.
Likewise.
But yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me again. Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you for listening to another podcast by the Association for Coaching. For over 20 years, our purpose has been to inspire and champion coaching excellence, advance the coaching profession, and to make a sustainable difference to individuals, organisations and society. To find out more about the AC and our member benefits, follow us on LinkedIn or visit our webpage at associationforcoaching.com. Explore our digital learning hub, enjoy our extensive library of on-demand webinars, signature programs, member benefits, interviews, podcasts, and a portfolio of live events featuring thought leadership, tools, models, and the latest industry trends to help you develop your coaching expertise.